What's going on, guys? My name is Chris, or Savi, depending on how you know me, and today what I want to talk to you about is how to scream like Matt Heafy from the metal band Trivium. For those of you who don't know who Trivium is, what are you doing? Trivium is a heavy metal band based out of Florida. For those of you that are familiar, Matt Heafy's got a little bit different of an approach to screaming. His vocals are unique. I've been covering their songs for the better part of the last 10 years now, practicing for my band. Because I'm obsessed with the madness! And I've gotten a few comments on people asking me how exactly I do it, and I've really put off this video because I am in no way a professional. Let's just get that out of the way, and I'm not much of a teacher either. I did attempt to make this video like 10 years back and deleted it because it was just that bad. And I didn't want to spread any false information out there to anybody and actually have somebody hurt themselves. So what I would suggest to you guys is to really do your homework on how to use your diaphragm, how to scream, all that stuff. And if you really want to hone down on how to sound like Matt Heafy, hopefully I can help you out. So one of the most important things first when you're starting off any kind of vocals is how to breathe properly. And it sounds pretty weird to some of you that may not be into this, but basically you want to really put emphasis on using your diaphragm. It sits on the bottom of your rib cage, kind of above your stomach, and it takes a while to master breathing with your diaphragm, and it's one of the most important, and when you're starting off, often overlooked things. But basically, you want to feel the air expand on the bottom of your rib cage outward, rather than just taking a big gulp of air right in through your chest and then just blowing it out. Back in high school, I think I took a couple of vocal lessons just to kind of see what it was all about, and one of the things that really stuck with me was when I was having trouble with my diaphragm. She suggested pulling on the side of the piano as I was breathing in, and it really helped me put emphasis on my diaphragm. Another thing that kind of helps is pretending you're breathing through a straw almost. Really pinpointing the air into like a small channel really helps you feel your diaphragm actually working. And the better you get at it, the more natural it'll be. Now that we got the breathing out of the way, let's talk a little bit more on how to actually scream like Matt Heafy. I've never actually heard him speak of what kind of scream he does, per se, but the screams that I do in my band feel very similar to when I'm doing a Trivium cover. And I've been told in the past that I do false chord screaming, as opposed to fry screaming, so take that as you will. There's a lot of good videos out there on how to do false chord screams and how to do fry screams, so I'm not going to really get too much into that. You guys can check that out. But I think the common theme that persists with false chord screaming and the way Matt Heafy sounds is you kind of want to feel a sensation in the back of your throat first. Like you're almost like you're gargling, if that's kind of how you describe it. It's that distortion that you hear in the back of screaming, but starting out, I really suggest you isolate that. So what I mean is you can kind of do a quiet version of screaming, like and once you really get the feel for that, you can kind of fake it to get the sensation going. But one of the things about screaming is it's not just, static noise. There's actually a pitch behind that somehow. But the thing is, the really good screamers out there, you don't hear it so much, you really just hear the raspiness and it blends into the vocals. But to practice, we are gonna have to do that. So one of the ways that you might practice it is to kind of use an actual pitch and then add that raspiness on top of it. So to sound a little bit like, oh! Once you start really diving back down into that distortion, you can almost kind of feel the pressure coming from down here to up in here. Back in like 2009, 2010, I found Melissa Cross's The Zen of Screaming, and there was a lot of good info in there, and I think that's the over the pencil, under the pencil technique she was talking about. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but you really feel it as you transition from the note into the raspiness and the note, but it's still there. It's really the powerhouse, I think, behind your vocals when you're screaming. And it might be really hard for you at first, and honestly, if it feels like you're clenching and you're not projecting loud enough, it should feel as effortless as when you're whispering it. If you're holding it with your diaphragm, if you're breathing properly, and if it doesn't, it could be a number of things. When I started recording vocals with my band, one of the first things that I noticed was in the vocal booth, I sucked. On stage, for some reason, it was just so easy. I don't know if it's because of, the power stance I had going on down there, or, the loud music, or just the energy of being with my friends, but it's always a lot harder to get that in the vocal booth, and I've actually heard Matt talk about this before, but not really go too much into it. And you can really hear it in Matt Heafy's scream live as well. It sounds a lot different than it does on the record, not to mention it sounds different record to record, but honestly, what it comes down to, I think, is confidence. I feel way more confident when the music is blasting, and sometimes when I get too much of my vocals in the monitor, like in the recording booth, I get kind of weird, and all of a sudden my scream loses its oomph. I've only known one person in my life who could just walk around in the middle of a mall and just start screaming at the top of his lungs effortlessly. Jay McGee, props to you. He would just walk around the mall, literally just blah, at the top of his lungs, and just felt so confident about it. And I always envied him for that, because if you take these headphones off while I'm recording, all of a sudden it's like, and my voice is gone. Really, the more comfortable you get dialing that raspiness in with the actual projection, the more effortless it feels. You can start kind of tweaking it on your own. And one of the things that comes pretty naturally when you're just doing screaming or singing at all, the higher notes are going to require a little bit more of an open mouth, like, and, you know, the lower you go, it's going to be more like an O shape. And you really want to get used to, you know, practicing moving your lips around while you're in the middle of doing vocals, because it's really the projection that matters when it comes to the sound. But a lot of vocalists, you can't understand a word that they're saying when they're screaming, because it's hard to actually enunciate doing vocals like that. And that's something that Matt Heafy does pretty well. And what I would really suggest is just starting off quietly like that, doing the fake scream, like almost a whisper. And the more that you get used to breathing with your diaphragm, and, you know, you put that loud music on, the easier it should become to actually project over. When you isolate the vocals from the actual music, it sounds way different sometimes for some screamers, and for others it sounds so clean, and it sounds just as gritty and distorted as it does outside and inside of the mix. And if that's a problem for you at first, if you kind of feel like you're getting more of the pitch than the raspiness, then I would suggest just kind of taking it back a little bit in volume and really getting a hand of that feeling like you're gargling in the back of your throat. And the air in your diaphragm should kind of just squeeze together gradually rather than just one shot. And vocals and screaming are something that really take time too. It wasn't something that came naturally for me at first. You can go back, and my first vocal covers were Trivium covers about 10 years ago. And I really started just to practice for my band and, you know, to track my progress along the way. And to have fun, of course, and to pay tribute to my favorite bands. But looking back, I really just didn't know what I was doing in terms of breathing with my diaphragm, and I've come a long way, and it's been such a journey. And it's really awesome that you guys asked me to do this, because honestly, I've wanted to do it for a long time, but I just didn't think it would be a very good video. So hopefully you guys got some use out of this. And if you guys are interested, my band's name is Death Truck. We sound pretty similar to Trivium in terms of the genre. We try and switch it up, but it's kind of hard not to hear the inspiration. But we're on all platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Apple Music, you name it. But yeah, here's to the next How to Scream Like Matt Heafy video in another 10 years. Thanks, guys. I tried to make this video a long time ago in like 2011, but it was so bad. And so this is a redemption, Nolan.